Hello, my name is Kim MacCarl, and I'm proud to share the life story of my grandfather, Walter MacCarl. My grandfather, Walter, born October 6, 1895, was one of 10 children who grew up at the family home on Wellington Street in Whitby. He left school at the age of 16 and worked as a clerk in the hardware business. Home deliveries of screens, gallons of paint, and tinware were all done using his bicycle. When World War I broke out in 1914, my grandfather signed up. This picture, taken in 1914, shows him in his uniform, far left, first row, with his father and 6 brothers prior to being deployed overseas. On March 13, 1916, at the age of 20, he joined the Canadian Expeditionary Force and was enlisted with the RCHA, Royal Horse Artillery, Kingston, Ontario. He was sent to the Reserve Canadian Field Artillery, Shorncliffe, England, Field Unit 1st Division, 7th Battery, 2nd Brigade. In England and France, my grandfather was trained as a gunner for trench combat and gas attacks. His paybook notes that daily pay was $1.10, $1 with an additional 10 cents for field allowance. Personal family artifacts include my grandfather's war watch, with the face protected by a metal cage, and his Canadian Field Artillery spurs manufactured in 1915. Also included a postcard for his birthday from his mother addressed to W.F. MacCarl somewhere in France. On Easter Monday, April 9, 1917, my grandfather was engaged in the Canadian Corps advancement at Vimy Ridge in northern France. This was one of the most memorable battles of World War I, where it is said Canada came of age. He never really talked about this time, except to say that there was mud, dead horses, and dead men everywhere. It was bad. My grandfather spent most of his years of service at the front. Once the war ended, November 11, 1918, he served for a time in the Army of Occupation. Duties included guarding bridges, overseeing movement of civilians and soldiers, and distributing food and supplies. After World War I, my grandfather Walter returned to Whitby and married Mabel Ballston, my grandmother, on October 16, 1920. Together they raised their 2 sons, Ralph and Neil, in Whitby. My grandfather worked for Mondrall Hardware at 113 Brock Street South, situated near the Four Corners, and eventually purchased the business in 1941. He put his own stamp on the business and named it MacCarl Hardware. While my grandfather's younger son, my Uncle Neil, became a sports writer with the Toronto Star and was inducted into the Whitby Sports Hall of Fame, my father Ralph joined the family business after his service in World War II. Together, father and son ran MacCarl Hardware until 1967, when my grandfather Walter retired. He was honored with the Est Wing Gold Hammer Award for 56 years as a hardware merchant when he retired. As a lifelong Whitby resident, my grandfather contributed to the town in many ways. He was a founding member of the Whitby Legion and was honored as a life member. He contributed to the building of the cenotaph. He was one of the original backers of the Whitby Dunleys and an original contributor to the Whitby General Hospital. Over his lifetime, my grandfather Walter saw many changes in Whitby. Dirt roads became paved highways. Small family stores began to give way to malls, and the population grew from 3,000 in the early 1900s to over 36,000 by the mid-80s. My grandfather Walter passed away in 1984 from emphysema, a lasting effect of the gas attacks during World War I, having offered much to his town and his country, lest we forget.